IB Nation, what's going on? Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on a Tuesday afternoon, which is a little bit different. We usually go on Mondays, but fresh off of the All-Star Game circuit, I was down in the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, Texas. So Brian Driscoll ordered me not to work yesterday. So we had the Recruiting Hour here. It's a Tuesday. I'm Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at Irish Breakdown. Mr. Sean Davis, of course, recruiting analyst here at Irish Breakdown. Sean, you were on yesterday. You're on today, man. Pulling a lot of duty this week on the podcast format, brother. But we have a lot to talk about. Recruiting never stops in this world. We kind of have a weird little lull now where Notre Dame's recruiting class for 2023 is finalized. We're talking a lot of transfer portal stuff. But we really want to start looking forward to the 2024 class here very soon. But to best do this today, we're going to kind of do a recap of the All-Star games, the All-American Bowl that I was at, the Under Armour All-American game that was in Florida, kind of went into the San Antonio week. We'll kind of recap that stuff as well. And there's some visitors this week already, Sean. We have a transfer portal player that we're going to talk about that's visiting this week, as well as Notre Dame Junior Day is this weekend coming up as well. So it's going to be busy, man. It's going to be a busy weekend, as it always is. Joined again by Sean Davis. Sean, I love how D-Rock Irish gets us started here and just says, "Good day, IB Nation." Throwing the home blue avatar out there for the rest of the month. Keep it right here for the latest and most accurate Irish news. And I just want to say I appreciate that, D-Rock. We try to be as accurate and as thorough as possible, and we're excited obviously to talk some recruiting. Before we start, hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, because we'll have you having a lot of shows this week. 5-star reviews on your favorite podcast platform are always appreciated. Sean, how are you,
man? I guess we just got some breaking news, bro.
Oh, what's that?
Remember, I had spoken about it, and we had gotten the scoop that Notre Dame was going through a process of interviewing someone on campus that was going to be the brand or general manager for NIL with Notre Dame moving forward, and they have announced the hire.
Oh yeah, do we have the news? Can we circulate this now? Can you pop us in there? Yeah, let's do it.
This is from Matt Fortuna.
Nice.
Notre Dame's on-campus general manager for NIL would be Kayla Miller. Altus Sports Partners hired Miller to lead Notre Dame's NIL strategy and education. Miller was previously a senior manager at On Location and has extensive basketball coaching and administrative experience. Now, we know that we had myself, and I know Brian as well, had several people that watch Irish Breakdown and Lucky Lefty podcasts that were actually being interviewed for the position. And they contacted us in the month of November. And I had said on Lucky Lefty podcast to expect Notre Dame to take a step forward in the NIL space early 2023. And I said that announcement would be coming. And this is what, both of us had heard about and had kind of confirmed with people inside the program. And Kayla Miller is now going to be the contact person. They didn't have a contact person, so that was very important. They didn't have an on-campus person to be the liaison. Now they do. That impacts recruiting. Now recruits will have someone directly to talk to along with the current players. And that's a big step in the NIL landscape that they made that hire. They were going through that practice late this year. And that's great to start off the recruiting hour.
That really is, man. I feel like that's going to be it's going to be a big topic with me and Brian tomorrow on the podcast. Now that we have Caleb Miller, is who you said, right? Is the name of the gentleman?
Kayla.
Oh, Kayla Miller. My apologies.
Kayla Miller. I'm sorry.
Okay. So you have
it's Kayla Miller. It's Kayla.
Nah, man. It's I blame the airplane ride 2 days ago back, Sean. My ears were popping, man, and I feel like my hearing has been absolutely terrible. So Kayla Miller is now going to be the direct correspondent for Notre Dame on the virtue of NIL and trying to regulate everything and make sure that's being implemented and utilized the way that it's intended at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I think it's a massive step, man. I mean, just quick thoughts, because we're not going to dive super in depth on it on today. I mean, we might have to have Sean Davis on again tomorrow with me and Brian to try to talk a little bit about this, because this is obviously big news. I mean, Sean, I'll say this, man. This was needed. This was necessary. This had to happen, right? What exactly does it look like? That'll be a great topic and be able to dive into what should it look like. We don't 100% know, right? But having a spokesperson and just a kind of a point person on this topic to be able to talk to recruits and to really be able to portray the full vision, it's very interesting. So Kayla Miller hired by the University of Notre Dame to kind of head the NIL side of the department. So
yeah, I just followed her. I just followed her on Twitter. She's a very young individual, so she should be able to relate to the parents as well as the athletes. And like we said, it's a step forward. She's an athlete herself,
which is important.
That's important as well, as well as an administrator. So I'm glad they made the hire. This takes away the uncomfortable. You can see Marcus Freeman was uncomfortable always talking about NIL. And I'm sure the coaches are uncomfortable talking about it. And to have someone that has the strength and the expertise to talk about it and can come from, the point of view of an athlete.
Yep.
It's really good. You're right. It's really good. And I'm sure she's going to build out a staff as well.
And this is just my initial response to it, Sean, is that I'm glad it's a younger person. I'm glad that it is a former athlete that has those perspectives, because I'll be honest, if I was a college athlete and I had some just old person that couldn't really relate to me talking to me about how to take advantage of NIL, I'm not sure I would listen, if I'm being honest, or listen very promptly, right? So having someone that could potentially relate to these young people as well, I think is important. So I'm sure we'll be diving into this a lot more over the coming days. But again, Kayla Miller, now appointed by Notre Dame to handle the NIL conversation on the side of Notre Dame. So it should be really interesting. But we'll get into that at a future date, Sean. We wanted to talk about Notre Dame recruiting and some official visitors that we have coming up this weekend, coming to you live again on Tuesday. Sean, I want to throw this one out there because this is, I think, is a good way to start. And you covered this guy a lot more than I did, because I was just getting into the recruiting space, beginning of January last year. And I wasn't really I followed Notre Dame recruiting, but I wasn't entrenched in the backstories and the players and in their, as far as their personalities and all this good stuff. So we have not a grad transfer. We have a transfer portal player, wide receiver, CJ Williams from Southern Cal, University of Southern Cal, that will be visiting Notre Dame this weekend. And for all Notre Dame fans out there, you are probably very much aware of CJ Williams, because he was committed to Notre Dame for a pretty long time, right? And then flipped his commitment to the Trojans late in the process. So he entered the portal, Sean, and I know he had visited Wisconsin. I think he had visited another school, and Notre Dame now. He is visiting this weekend, and I have to think, and I'm seeing the reactions in the chat earlier, I saw the reactions on the board already, and even some on Twitter, about CJ Williams visiting Notre Dame, because he did spurn them at one point, right? He was committed to Notre Dame, ended up flipping his commitment. Now he's coming to visit Notre Dame, right? And I kind of want to open it to you, Sean, because obviously you following that recruitment, you being able to just kind of see the backstory and then, him flip in and all that good stuff. There's a couple layers we're going to hit on.
Yeah.
One is just that, right? You have a kid that decommitted from your program once upon a time. That doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. It doesn't mean, people make mistakes all the time, right? It happens. So, but you're having a player that decommitted from your program, a player that just had left the USC program because he wasn't playing a ton, right? Kind of buried behind guys like Jordan Addison and Taj Washington and a very good wide receiver group. You're now coming into a wide receiver room that, and we've given Chancey Stuckey a lot of praise, right? All of a sudden, looking back at where we were just a year ago at this time, right? You now have Deion Colsey, Tobias Merriweather, Lorenzo Styles, Jaden Thomas, Matt Salerno, all coming back.
Right.
You also have a 4-man class coming in of Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, and Caleb Smith. Not to mention, you have another Caleb Smith, the grad transfer from Virginia Tech, coming in. You now are 10 deep at wide receiver, which is much different situation than you were last year. So CJ Williams, if he does ultimately pick Notre Dame, he's coming into a crowded room, right? That's not to say that CJ can't come in and compete and be one of the better wide receivers on the roster. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying, though, is that you left a program in USC because it was a crowded room.
Yeah.
You're coming into another crowded room, although not as much proven commodities as what USC had at the time.
Yeah.
And you're in a position where you decommitted from this program before. And I would also say this, Sean, and I would love to hear your feedback on this. I just want to hear your overarching opinion on the whole situation. Does CJ Williams really bring something to the table that you don't have on the roster right now? That would be my question, right? Like, is he different than Jaden Greathouse, for instance? Like, is he different than those types of guys? So just your opinions on CJ Williams and taking a second look at Notre Dame here.
Yeah, let's have that discussion, right? And let's judge this by what we see from a championship offense last night, right? They have dudes, right? Some of those dudes are 4 stars. Some of those guys were 2 stars, right? But somehow, some way, they're dudes. And I think it comes down to the offensive coordinator. Like, I love Todd Monken. Todd Monken was out there looking at practice one day, and he looks on the side field, and he sees this little guy just running around making plays. And he's like, man, every time I look over there, this dude is making plays. Like, let me bring him over here. Like, I know we got these 4 stars and these 5 stars, but he can help us. I definitely can put some stuff together for him. He can be our screen guy. He can be our third down guy in this 21 set in the slot. Like, yeah, I can use him. And that's Lad McConkey. Right? Like, stars don't matter.
Former 2-star Lad McConkey.
Former 2-star. That's an offensive coordinator seeing that and saying, you know what, we can use that.
Mm-hmm.
We can use that to win football games. So it's not just the players. How do you get the players in and use them? Yeah, CJ Williams, 4-star talent. But what does he do? Going back to what you just asked, what does he do that's going to allow him to be a dude in championship situations and help us win games? That's the question they're going to have to ask, right? You got 10 guys. At least 3 of those guys have to be dudes, right? Brock Bowers is a dude. Like, literally, we can use Todd Monken's like, I can do whatever I want to do with him. Y'all can use him 3 or 4 different ways, and you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop it, right? Because I'm going to give you something going this way, bring him this way. I'm going to line him out split. You can't stop it. I'm going to connect him in 12 personnel with Washington on the other side. Which tight end are you going to take away? It's like, this is what your job is as a coach, not just to recruit and get them in the building, but to develop them and then properly use them in the offense for the offense to be effective and win football games. So I'm all for bringing the talent in, but like you just pointed out, how is he any different? Who's going to be our screen guy? Who's our Lad McConkey on this roster?
Right.
Who's that guy that can make you miss?
Mm-hmm.
Take the and go 50 yards. Who?
Hopefully it's Caleb Smith at some point. Hopefully it's Jaden Greathouse, maybe to a degree. Hopefully it's. You're not wrong, Sean. You're not right. Like they don't have that. That's why Caleb Smith in this class, and I'm talking about Caleb Smith out of Reedy High School, the 2023 high school commit. That's why he is. That's why he's important. That's why he was important, because you have now a lot of trees, right? You have Tobias, you have Deion. Jaden Greathouse is a bigger receiver coming in. Braylon James is a bigger receiver coming in. A lot of those guys can win on the outside, but the question that you have is, do you have that guy on the inside? And so CJ, for me, I remember Brian made this. I think he made this comparison last year, which I kind of liked. He compared him to Juju Smith-Schuster, right? Which I'm like, makes sense. Like he's definitely more of a slot receiver, but he is a little bit different than what you have in that sense, right? Like he brings a little bit different of a dynamic. And I just kind of want to, put this out there for a second, because I see someone said something about, he's a, you add all the talent that you can to the room or whatever. It had nothing to do with talent, the conversation that I started here, right? CJ Williams is a very talented kid. There was a reason that he was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. My commentary is more on, is he so different than what you have now that he brings a different skill set that would fit correctly, right? Like that was my thing. If it was just CJ Williams as a talent, I'd be like, I mean, and honestly, I'll be open to it. Like if CJ Williams wants to come to Notre Dame and the coaches are comfortable with it, I'm good with it, man. I am. It's just you have to have the nuanced conversation though, because there's a lot of different vantage points to this one, right? And people might not care because again, you know, you always have. There's always second chances out there, right? And there's always players that are people that make mistakes. And this isn't even just in the recruiting world. Like people make mistakes every single day, right? If I was judged based upon one bad action I have, then I would probably have no loved ones in my life, right? That's just where we are. Yeah. So it's not that CJ can't fit in, can't fit in the program. It's just, does it make sense for both sides is more of what the conversation I'm having. So I was just curious more on your side of things, Sean, because again, I didn't really I watched his highlight tapes, obviously, when he committed to Notre Dame. I followed along with the recruitment a little bit, but I didn't know him personally, right? Like I don't know what makes him tick. I didn't know his relationships with the coaches, all that good stuff. Like there's nuance to this conversation.
He committed, and of course he committed to the previous staff and the previous wide receiver coach. And I don't know if Jaden Mickey and him have repaired their beef. Maybe they'll do that when he visits because Jaden Mickey, who he had a relationship with, and they both committed, and they both had said certain things to each other once they committed that they were going to do once they got to Notre Dame. And Jaden Mickey made no mistake that when he decommitted, that he had an issue with him.
Right.
And was like, oh, that's what we're doing? And said it publicly. So yeah, and then when he left, he made some statements about Notre Dame and the lack of a passing game, and Notre Dame is a great school for tight ends to go to. He said some stuff. So, I mean, if the staff is cool with taking him, then that's fine. But look, he left USC for a reason. He left USC for a reason.
Yep. You're not wrong.
He's not transferring because, I mean, who would you rather? I would love to be a receiver for Caleb Williams.
Sure. And they're losing Jordan Addison, right? So you would think that there would be some opportunities opening up.
Right. Yeah. But he was supposed to be the slot guy. Then you had Taj Washington. And then you had this other freshman come on in the bowl game. So it was like, yo, you got passed up by other people in your class. Now you're in the transfer portal. You come to Notre Dame. I mean, there's a kid named Tobias Merriweather. There's 3 kids coming in that expect to play.
And three kids that are going to be all early enrollees too, right? Which is important. It's
absolutely. Important. And someone mentioned Jeremiah Love can be that screen guy. He's a running back. Can we get an actual wide receiver
to throw a now screen to? Right.
Absolutely. So that's what makes it beautiful for Todd Monken, right? If Ladd is in the split out, there is no watch. If Jeremiah Love don't split out, you're bringing him in the game to get the ball to him. Yeah. That's an automatic alert to the defense. Yo. Because he's not a natural wide receiver. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he hasn't played wide receiver. Now Caleb Smith from Frisco, that's the kid that you feel like, okay, smallest receiver. That's why they went and got him because he fits that type. Bring him in, and now we can start doing some things with him, and he can be that guy. So I don't know exactly what CJ Williams would bring that doesn't already exist. Right? Sure. He is, in my opinion, he was going to be a slot guy. That's how the previous regime envisioned him, a big slot guy.
And you have that in Jaden Thomas right now, right?
Exactly.
Jaden Greathouse can do some of those same things. That's just kind of my point, Sean. And I think the Caleb Smith that transferred for Virginia Tech could do some of those same things too, right? So it's not about a lack of talent for CJ Williams. I think he could be a very good player in college. It's just, is he so much better than what you have, or is he better at all than what you already have that you would sacrifice that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, would you
I do.
sacrifice their
Look,
developments for a player that didn't want to be here at one point,
it's
right?
not it's not just about having depth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have smart depth.
Mm-hmm. Can we?
Texas A&M,
Can I say this real quick? Can we stop with
yeah.
the top 75 talent thing? Okay. Can we stop with this? Sean, you were just talking about a young man that was a 2-star recruit last night. That's a 2-time national
Hmm.
championship, was the leading receiver for the team, right? Can we
Hmm.
stop with the top? He brings top 75 talent. I don't care what CJ was ranked as a player coming out of
Hmm.
high school, right? I care what he did in college and what he's done in college. And what the recent film tells me is he had 4 receptions for 38 yards this year. Okay. Can we stop with that? Because that seriously is underselling the talent that's on the roster already. I would say that Tobias Merriweather is a top 50 talent, no matter when he comes out, right? Jaden Greathouse is a stud that's coming out this year. Braylon James is a stud. Can we stop with the top 75 talent thing? Like, can you stop throwing arbitrary things? Talk to me about how it fits. Talk to me about how it fits. That's the conversation that we need to have. It's not about a lack of talent. And if they choose to bring CJ Williams in, I will be very happy because he is a talented football player, right? That is a good conversation. We're talking about how it fits together. That
Hmm.
is the conversation we're having. Sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just
No, and
stuff
and
drives me crazy, man.
and to add context to what you're saying, once again, he had those stats with Caleb Williams, and once again, he got passed up on the depth chart by fellow freshmen. Tobias didn't get on the field because he had veterans in front of him. There were no freshmen passing him up. And Tobias missed 4 games because of a concussion. So his stats probably would have been more. So and if Tobias had Caleb Williams, I guarantee you his stats would have been better in a full healthy season. So we gotta bring context. Stop. Look, no one. People are missing what we're saying. No, it
Mhm.
has nothing to do with his talent. Has
Four,
nothing to do with his talent.
Sean, 4 times the catches that Tobias had this year, and Tobias still had more yards and more touchdowns. It's just so funny, right? Like,
Once
come on,
again,
man, stop
once
with
again,
that, please. Stop
once
with that.
again.
Tobias Merriweather did more with 1 catch than CJ Williams did with his 4. Stop that, please. Stop that, man. That's so silly. That's so silly.
That you,
We,
it-
uh,
once again, context, because
yes.
people are missing the point.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're not even like, again, I'm not saying that you don't take CJ Williams. I'm just talking about how he fits into the offense if you do take CJ Williams.
It's like you're getting them for depth. For
Yeah.
what? Depth for what? Depth behind the other 4 guys that do the exact same thing that he
Right.
does. That's not good depth.
And now we have someone saying we don't have a clear wide receiver 1. Okay, but is
He's
CJ
not.
Williams the clear wide
He's
receiver
not
1?
that.
That's
Are
my
you kidding? Wait
question.
a minute. Wait a minute. Are they trying to say that he's a
I
wide
think
receiver one?
I think people see the recruiting rankings and just assume he is head and shoulders
This
above
is
everybody else.
he
That's
he
what I think.
he got passed up by 2 other freshmen at USC, but he's a wide receiver one. So Lincoln Riley just let a wide receiver one walk out of his program. That's
And
what
a
that's
wide
what they're telling
receiver
us.
and a wide receiver 1 doesn't think that he can unseat Taj Washington or Brendan Rice next year, right? A
And let's
clear wide
be.
receiver 1. Come on, man.
I'll take it even further step than that. I'm gonna keep it all the way real. If
Uh-huh.
he's that cold, why is he visiting Wisconsin as a wide receiver? Let's keep it all the way a buck. If he's that cold as a wide receiver, why is he visiting Wisconsin?
I mean, they're running an air raid apparently now. So
Get the heck out of here, man. Dude, we're not about to do that today. And I said this with Sam Hartman. As a fan base, we got to stop being thirsty, man.
yeah.
Stop. This is Notre Dame. This is freaking Notre Dame. Stop acting like you a 20th ranked program in the nation. This is Notre Dame. I'm not getting
Yeah.
happy over no CJ Williams. Now, if Perry was coming with Sam Hartman from Wake Forest,
Sean,
I
don't
would be
you
like, okay, now, okay, yeah, add him to the room. Give me one of the kids from up in Michigan.
uh-huh.
Give me an AJ Henning that would be a type that we don't have in the wide receiver room. Give me that. Give me a Roman Wilson transferring. That type with elite speed that can make you miss and catch screens. Give me that. Yeah, now I'm ecstatic. CJ Williams? A kid that got beat out by two other freshmen that were ranked lower than him in his class that made him transfer. And now we're talking about he could be a what are we really talking about, man?
Sean, don't you think it's kind of weird that the only teams you're hearing associated with CJ Williams are East Coast and Midwest schools as well? Is that a little weird to you? I mean, a little bit as a Cali kid that would come from modern day high school, just a little bit. Look, again, I just want to put this back out there because I feel like people are misconstruing my talking points here, right? If Notre Dame feels it's a good fit and CJ Williams wants to be here, I welcome the talent. He's a talented kid. I'm not saying he's not. We're talking about how he fits into the offenses if he does come in. That's all I'm talking about, man. That's all I'm talking about. And no, I'm not here to accept the fact that CJ Williams is so much better than everybody on the roster. He comes in, he's a wide receiver one, day one. And if he's a depth player, that's fine. He can be a depth player. That's cool. But he's also a depth player that didn't want to be at Notre Dame, right? That went to USC. So there is things that you need to figure out here because he wasn't okay with being a depth player at USC. You think he's going to come here at Notre Dame and be a depth player?
He threw jabs at the offensive coordinator when he decommitted.
Right.
In the system. Mm-hmm. Only to go to a system where he could thrive and leave because he got beat out by other freshmen. What are we talking about right now? Like, dude, I swear I try to stand out front for this fan base against Alabama fans, Ohio State fans. Look, I'm done. Because the last week or so has proven to me that, man, our expectations as a fan base have gotten really low. Really low. Like, we're freaking Notre Dame, man. We've been to 2 college football playoffs. We played Georgia to a standstill and had a chance to beat them in the fourth quarter. For years, we've been saying we're a quarterback away. We get a quarterback. We're recruiting better. The 24 class is going to be better than the 23 class. And now we're happy about a kid that can't make it at USC.
Who didn't want to be here. That's the main thing for me is that he didn't want to be here. And again, he could completely change around, right? Maybe he makes amends. Everybody's cool on both sides, and if it makes sense, that's fine. I'm good with that. But from an outside perspective right now, CJ Williams didn't want to be here. Like that's the point blank period to it. What happened all of a sudden that he wants to be here now? That's my thing, right? Like that's all I'm saying.
We're trumpeting for CJ Williams, man. CJ Williams.
I'll say this, Sean, and this might be people might be mad at me about this, and that's fine. That's fine. But there's a kid from Cal in the portal right now, J. Michael Sturdivant. Yeah, Sturdivant. I would rather have him because he brings something different to the table, and he's more productive.
Absolutely.
And
we got to see personally,
exactly
up close. In Notre Dame Stadium, what he could do.
Mm-hmm. But we'll see. We don't want to spend too much time on this because we already have. But CJ Williams visiting Notre Dame this weekend. If it goes well and he ends up in the class, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it and just in general. So, So we'll go there. Apparently, we're going to rank some of these guys. And we'll keep moving. So, Sean, but we do have some junior day invites. Sean's mad. Hey, Sean, I want that hat, by the way, man. That is a sick hat. I need that hat, by the way. I need that hat, man.
It is. Brian sent it to me. I love it.
It is a great hat. I bet you are heated, brother. We need to chill here for a second.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing? We're better than this. Expect more. More.
People are saving receipts if he comes. Okay, save the receipts.
Bring him on the show. I will tell him to his face. I don't care.
Oh, and what did I actually say that was so disrespectful? By the way, I said that he is similar to a lot of what you have. True. I said I'd be okay with him coming if they're both good on both sides. True. And I said that he didn't want to be here at Notre Dame. What did I say that wasn't true?
It's facts.
What did I say? I'm just asking, what did I say that wasn't true?
Facts. He said Notre Dame is not a school that you go to if you're a wide receiver. It came out of his mouth. He said you go to Notre Dame if you want to be a tight end. That's what he said. He said
Yeah.
that's the system.
Mm-hmm.
His words. But yet and still, he's on the doorstep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's changed?
Just trying to figure out what me and you said, Sean, that was so disrespectful to CJ Williams. I
Now we
just
got
don't
people
know.
saying he's a wide receiver number one, but he couldn't cut it at USC.
Whatever, man.
Right.
Sean, a couple very interesting players who will be on campus. 2024 recruits, because if you haven't checked out boards@irishbreakdown.com, you should, because we now have a running list of the junior day visitors this week. So this one, there's going to be a couple of junior days. This one is going to be a little bit of a more local conversation, right? This will be a little bit more of a local situation. So you should expect more Midwest players, maybe some Northeast, a little bit more of local kind of feel to this junior day, Sean. But I want to start with a couple 2024 commits that are in the class for Notre Dame that will be on campus for the junior day, which I think are big for this, Sean. I think they're big for this type of setting. When you have talented recruits on, having CJ Carr, 2024 quarterback out of the state of Michigan, grandson of Lloyd Carr, and wide receiver Cam Williams out of Glenbard West High School in the state of Illinois. They will be on campus this weekend for junior day. We're expecting a couple more 2024 commits that will be on campus. The only one that I've gotten verified that will not so far is Owen Wafel. But I do not want to put out names that we have not had verified yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are, but those are the two guys that we know for certain will be on campus this weekend, CJ Carr and Cam Williams. And Sean, I just want to throw this one real quick to these fellas before we talk about a couple uncommitted players that are scheduled to potentially be on campus. Yes. I think it's huge, man. It's huge because those are the two probably biggest recruiters in this class for 2024 right now for Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
CJ Carr, Cam Williams, they have the voices. They're very outgoing, and they represent what the 2024 class is building right now. Yeah. So I think it's huge for them on this junior day coming up that Notre Dame has two of the biggest recruiters on campus that just so happen to be very talented players in their own right.
Yo, Cam Williams is connected to maybe the three most important recruits on the board in 24. Ryan Wingo and Cam Williams have a great relationship. Justin Scott and Cam Williams talk every day. Like, I think he talks to Jeremiah McClellan. He's locked in on just about every big-time recruit. And then CJ Carr, when Justin Scott drops his top 8 on Sunday night, CJ Carr's right there with the retweet. Come home, big fella. So this junior day will lead to the Irish invasion over the summer. And the Irish invasion was more than successful last year with the trio you got from that particular day. So these days are very important. These days are very important. So a lot of good juniors from the surrounding states, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, that'll be coming in. And if I'm not mistaken, I'll double check. Marquise Lightfoot might be coming in this weekend as well.
Yes. I talked to him this morning. He is a player that is tentative, but he is trying to make that trip happen. Yeah, so Marquise Lightfoot is trying to get on campus as well.
Yeah. So when I talked to him, I know he and Al Washington talk very consistently. Yeah, he let me know that was the case. And, his relationship with Coach Washington and Notre Dame is increasing and growing. He just released his new junior film, I want to say 2 weeks ago. So you can go check that out. But number one pass rusher, defensive end in the state of Illinois. And Justin Scott is the number one overall player in the state of Illinois from the class of 2024. So absolutely. CJ Carr is just a dude, right? And the quarterback doesn't have to say too much. He's the quarterback in the class. right? Like he might not have to reach out and talk as much as Cam Williams to certain guys, but he's the dude, right? We didn't have that for a long time in the 23 class, and Drake Bowen did a great job of kind of stepping into that position and being that for the 23 class until Kenny Minchie came in. And even the guys in the 23 class told us on National Signing Day that the class felt different once they got their quarterback. Like
Yes.
they talked about it, like, man, we don't have our quarterback though.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, you
and
remember Braylon James said something just like that, Sean. It
yeah,
was like a relief. It's like
hmm
just kind of exclamation point on it, right? Like
absolutely,
that's it, man.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. So the class 24 class already has that feeling. They have the guy at the top. They have the quarterback that is the inverse of what we saw last year, where the defensive side was really most of the early signings. It's the offense that's gotten going in the 24 class, and now the defense is going to have to pick some things up. Of course, you have Carson Hobbs, Owen
Yes.
Wafel,
Mhm.
and Mike Mickens. His list of guys that he's looking at, they're all impressive,
Yes.
all impressive. So we can't wait. I think most of us will really start digging into guys like once the open, because I'm sure we'll get an updated list over the next couple of weeks of guys that have been added, what comes
Yes.
out of this, junior day, and then we'll really get a nice spreadsheet for 24 and who they're really going after at every position. And then we can really start digging in and reporting on certain guys and making connections with certain guys. But the guys we already know, like the Robinson twins or the Robinson brothers out of California, Chancey
Hmm.
Stuckey is relentless on them.
Yep.
I'm sure they probably won't be making it, even though California's a mess right now with the rainstorms.
They're big track and field guys too. So I
Yeah.
know like they couldn't make it down to the junior combine and the All
hmm
American Bowl this past weekend because they had the track meet and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So they're
Yeah.
pretty busy this time
Yeah.
of year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Them.
I
Uh,
talked to so for more instance, right? I talked to Caleb Brewer, who's the offensive lineman out of PA that they offered a
yeah.
few weeks ago.
hmm
He cannot make it this week because he's an all-state wrestler, Sean. I don't think he's
Right.
lost a wrestling match in like 2 years, right? And he's got a tournament this
So we,
weekend.
we got
So
another pretty good offensive lineman that's dominating in wrestling. That's always good. That's always great.
his film, sorry to go off on a tangent for a second, but if you have not seen Caleb Brewer, he's an offensive lineman out of Pennsylvania. His film, Sean, is hysterical, man. So he's 6'5", 300 pounds, and he's playing tight end,
hmm
defensive end. We're number 44, and it is so funny, man. Like
hmm
I'm literally like laughing my butt off watching this film. So it'll be interesting though, and I agree with you 100%. Right,
Yeah.
this spring and this summer is going to be really interesting
I agree.
because you have the coaching staff who has proven that they have a lot of good recruiters on the staff. You have your quarterback already in place in CJ Carr. And Sean, now that you have the NIL side of things starting to figure itself out a little bit, I feel like there could be a little bit of a storm here over the
Mm-hmm.
spring and summer for Notre Dame because it's been a little quiet on the 2024 side, but it's also because
hmm
it filled up pretty early. So,
hmm
yeah, let's leave it there. But Sean, give me a little more on Marquise Lightfoot because I know he's a kid that you like a ton. And again, he's going to be here on campus
Yeah.
potentially this weekend, not fully
Yeah.
verified, but he's trying to make the trip.
Yeah. Marquise Lightfoot was a kid that from Chicago that I talked to. I actually talked to him and Justin Scott and Cam Williams like February of last year, and just getting a jump start on the 24 kids. And at that point in time, neither of them had an offer from Notre Dame. Ultimately, Cam Williams got the offer first or right around the time that Marquise Lightfoot got his offer. And Marquise Lightfoot came to the blue and gold game. And I remember talking to him, and he was just excited, But he goes to Kenwood, who does an amazing job. I think they have something like 8 kids from that program in the city signed D1 offers. D1 offers. I think 5 of them went to Power Five schools. So it's an up and coming. They've been dominating the city, the CPS football landscape for like 3 years now. And I love that coach because he's not controlling, but he's very much involved as a head coach with the recruitment of all his players. And Mike Mickens actually came up this summer to check on Khalil Tate, a safety that actually ended up going to Iowa. Mike Mickens was actually checking in on him because he's like a nickel safety type. He ends up at Iowa. And, Mike Mickens watched him practice, looked at some things, had some conversations, but I don't think it went any further than that. So this is a really good program that Marquise Lightfoot is coming from. That's the first thing I want to put out. But he's long. He is, dude. He's like Dr. Octavian, man, from Spider-Man. It's just like, just these long arms, long legs. He comes off the edge, and his get off is something that he talked about. Like, even when I talked to him last week, he was just talking about technique and get off. Like, that's what I want to improve. That's what I'm working on this summer and this spring. My get off, my technique, because the talent's there. The size, the length, everything's there. And, at the time when he was initially offered, I'm not sure if he was an immediate take for Notre Dame. I think they just want to see him develop a little more, because at this time, I want to say he was getting ready to graduate. I'm not graduate, but he was still a sophomore.
Yeah,
getting ready to go into his junior year, and his sophomore.
And he was like all limbs and
Yeah.
just filling out.
Yeah, he was just filling out. You go see his junior film now.
Looks different.
He's been in the weight room. His game looks different.
Yep.
And now you're like, okay, I understand why Al Washington is talking to him consistently. So if they can get that 1-2 combination out of Chicago in the 24 class with him and Justin Scott, man, look, all of the concerns we've had previously, I know I would back off. I would back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And if Marquise Lightfoot and Justin Scott get added to the 24 class, I'll shut my mouth. Everybody in the chat can keep those receipts.
I don't even need Lightfoot in that conversation, man. If they get Justin Scott after what after this turn that's taken, right? If they get Justin Scott, I'll shut up for a year. Like, man, you go ahead, sir. You go ahead. I got it.
I like his junior film,
a
lot more than I like this sophomore film.
Agree with that. I agree. I think Marquise took a huge step forward. There's no doubt. And I also think that there's a few interesting Viper types in this class, Sean. I just had what I perceive to be the biggest needs in this class for Notre Dame, like positions they need to hit on. And I talked a lot about Vipers. So I talked about guys like Jacob Smith, Danny Okoye, who's a player that people have been asking a lot about that I'll hit on in the mailbag a lot, right? Marquise Lightfoot, because I think that Notre Dame might be in a situation, I don't know if you agree with this, Sean, but they might be in a situation where you might take 2 Vipers in this class, right? And you don't take another strong side defensive end. Like, you might be in that situation after what they just did in 2023, where you say, I need pure interior guys, and then I need 2 Vipers, right? Like, that's what I need in this class. Because I think Notre Dame does need more of that type moving forward. But Marquise Lightfoot potentially making the trip. I want to talk, Sean, we got verification from a big-time player that is going to be on campus this weekend. That's Walter Matthews, who is a tight end out of Hiram. I think it's Hiram. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but he's out of Georgia. Sean, 6'7", 250 pounds already, man. He was just offered by Notre Dame on December 22nd, so right before Christmas. And I'll be completely honest to everyone out there. I hit him up last night to see if he was coming. Okay. And I was expecting, like, nah, I'm gonna try to get there sometime this spring, right? That's just generally what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I'll be there this weekend. I'm like, oh, first time? Yeah, first time. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I've been talking a lot about Carter Nelson, and I think for really good reasons.
Really good reasons, yeah.
Yeah. But Notre Dame has recently added a couple really talented tight ends to the board in 2024. Walter Matthews is one. Jaden Reddle from Missouri is the other, who's kind of he's more of a big wide receiver that's going to transition to tight ends.
Right.
But Marquise Lightfoot. I almost said Marquise Lightfoot. Walter Matthews, though, Sean, this is an interesting one because he is rated by On3 as the number 81 player in the class, number 8 athlete. ESPN has him rated as the number 1 athlete in the 2024 class. So he's a highly regarded tight end, huge body, man. When you look at his body, this kid literally could be 6'7", 265. You know the Darnell Washington kid that was playing for Georgia last night, Sean?
Yes.
That's what he could look like. Like he could look like that type of dude. I think he's even a little more straight line fast than Darnell Washington is personally.
Right.
But
so now what you're talking about is the same thing we were talking about the wide receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have depth all you want to. What does the depth look like?
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of Georgia is they have 2 tight ends that are 2 totally different tight ends.
2 different, yeah. And if Eric Gilbert had his head on straight, they would have 3 tight ends that are completely different players. Yeah.
Which means every time they're on the field together, they stress the defense in multiple ways because you have no clue. Because both can block. As small as Brock Bowers is, he puts forth effort.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, no doubt.
So now the defense is like, what do we do? And that makes it easier and gives more room to the receivers, right? Georgia really only has one big body receiver.
And that's the one Smith kid, right? Yes. He's tall. Yeah, he's tall. Yeah.
That's it. They only have one big body receiver. Everybody is smaller, slot, speed. Why? Because their size is coming from the tight ends.
Yes.
And they have this one tight end that can pretty much be a slot receiver on third downs from 12 personnel. And they can just stress you so many different ways. And that's what you're talking about. Carter Nelson, I understand now. And I love what coach is doing in recruiting. I understand why he took a pass on Christian Bantanker. Even though look, everybody wants him. All of the SEC schools want him. He's right here in your backyard. When you got a Carter Nelson type and you see this kid, you don't have those in your tight end room.
Yeah.
Because you have Christian Bantanker and you have that type.
Exactly.
In your tight end room already.
Who's a good player. Really
good player. Yeah. Really good player. Loves Notre Dame. Loves Notre Dame. Unfortunately, you have to build out the depth the right way.
Yes.
You just can't say, oh, we're just going to get tight ends. We're going to get 6 tight ends. No, you have to have different types to make it easier for your offense to stress the defense in multiple ways. And that's what we were talking about with the wide receiver room.
Yes.
Don't just go get a guy. Go get something that you don't have that can add stress to the defense.
Right. Because at the end of the day, Sean, going back to the wide receiver conversation, if I have 3 wide receiver spots and I have 6 guys that play one spot, they don't fit together, right? Yeah. I can't get those guys on the field together. But guys that can play multiple spots, or I have 2 really good slots, 2 really good X's, and then I can kind of mix and match. That's what we're talking about, right? Like that's the conversation that I'm having here. And tight end is similar to your point, right? Because Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington are completely different football
players. Yep.
And I just want to say this before I continue. I saw someone on the board after I put the Walter Matthews up, a little bit of an intel piece. Someone said, is this a reaction to Carter Nelson in some way? The answer is no, it's not. It's not. I talked to Carter, someone close to Carter very recently, this morning actually, and I think that Notre Dame is getting in a pretty good spot here. I do think it's going to be a Nebraska-Notre Dame battle for Carter Nelson when all is said and done. I just think that Notre Dame is also evaluating the landscape, and they're like, oh, well, that Walter Matthews kid, it's pretty good, right? Jaden Riddell up in Missouri, pretty good football player, right? So it's just expanding the board naturally. And that's where we are, Sean.
Look, Tommy, let's be honest. Watching that game last night, some of the stuff that Todd Monken does is some of the stuff Tommy likes to do. So maybe Notre Dame is reacting to watching Georgia's 2 tight ends for the last 2 years.
Could be. I mean, it's a copycat league at the end of the day.
Maybe they're like, okay, let's go get Carter and let's go get him. Let's go get these 2. And we had them for 3 years. Just nightmare. 21 personnel, 12 personnel.
And Notre Dame has a really good tight end already committed in 2024 in Jack Larson, right?
That's really.
But Jack is 6'3", will probably be like 240, right? At the end of the day. He's more like that movement-based player, right? He's not a true in-line tight end. He's more of a big wide receiver. So getting a bigger body type potentially with him, because the one thing that all these, although Walter Matthews, Carter Nelson, and Jaden Reddle are all very different players, they do have one thing in common, Sean. They're all incredibly long, right? Like they are really long football players. And Jack Larson's not the longest guy in the world. So you need to counterbalance lack of length with one with length at the other. And Walter Matthews is stupid long. Carter Nelson is stupid long. Jaden Reddle out of Missouri is stupid long. So getting a guy like a Walter Matthews on campus, I could see him fitting with Jack Larson if he ends up at Notre Dame. I think that would be a very dynamic duo. And I think someone just said it. Jared Parker swings big. I like it. And that's interesting too, Sean, because this is the first recruiting cycle that we're really going to see Jared Parker.
Absolutely.
Because Cooper Flanagan was already committed in the 2023 classes. And they were content with only taking one tight end. It wasn't like Jared Parker had to get on the trail and really dominate 2023. So far, 2024, found a guy early in Jack Larson. He has a chance to take a second tight end, and he's swinging for some dudes, man. Some absolute freak show dudes.
And you can see that he's come in and said, look, they told us that there was being self-inventory was being done throughout the entire program through the year while they were trying to win games. They were looking at everything in the program, including the roster, to say, we need to improve, but this is how we need to improve in this area. So when you, like I said, when you pass on a kid in your backyard that's darn good, that's your prototype Notre Dame tight end. Like you print up Notre Dame tight end, that's him. Looks like it, talks like it, comes from Chicago area, go get him. He's raised the bar. He's like, you know what? We could go get him. But you know what? Let's go get some dudes. Some dudes that can be dudes in championship games. And that's not saying Bentenka can't. But these kids, when you're talking about 6'7", high jumping 11 feet, like, what? That's crazy. Doing windmill dunks on the break. Carter Nelson.
Carter. You know, it's funny, Sean, as I talked to someone close to Carter this morning, he's working through a little bit of a high ankle sprain, but he's still playing. But he's still throwing out windmills, man. It's wild. It's wild, man.
This is the type of athleticism. Look, this is the two kids they're going after, as you said. Both of them could be more athletic than Michael Mayer.
Oh, easy. I would say.
And that might be blasphemous to people in the chat.
It's not, because I think Walter Matthews is probably a similar-ish athlete as Michael Mayer. I mean, but just point blank. And again, we're not talking about just football players, right? Because Michael Mayer is one of the best football players we've ever seen at Notre Dame. So we're not saying these kids are better football players, but Carter Nelson's a better athlete than Michael Mayer. I mean, that's just where we're at, right? The kid's a 7-foot high jumper as a sophomore in high school. The Jalen Reddle kid is probably a more athletic kid. He's legit like 4'5" something athlete. So yeah, they're more athletic. Will they be nearly as good as Michael Mayer? Who knows? Probably not. I mean, Michael Mayer's, Sean, I say this all the time, and it still blows my mind. Yeah. In 3 years at Notre Dame, Michael Mayer cemented himself as possibly the greatest tight end to ever play at the best factory of tight ends in college football history. That's what Michael Mayer did, right?
Absolutely.
He is a dude, man. One of the best players that I've ever seen don a Notre Dame uniform. Michael Mayer's that guy. Yeah. But athletically, Carter Nelson, Jaden Reddle, they're freak shows, man. They are freaky dudes athletically.
And you said it right. As a high jump, 7 feet. I meant to say jump. He can touch 11 foot.
Easy.
Foot rim.
Easy.
It's like, I remember the first time you're like, Sean, here you go. I'm like, all right. And yeah, I was wrong because I was like, Nebraska. I'm like, Nebraska?
8-man football in Nebraska too.
Eight
So
man
yeah.
football. I'm like, okay, double R.
He's playing against nobodies. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, double R. Let's check him out. Like, oh.
Someone said high jump 11 feet.
Yeah, I did say that. I did say that.
Yeah.
But like hit you back like, yo, this kid was a 3 because wasn't he like originally a 3-star?
Yeah, man, because Sean, he comes from a
Like a
middle of
3-star?
nowhere
Dude.
school, man. Like, yeah.
I'm like, yo, a 3-star?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, please, let's get him signed up now. Like,
and now he's a top 150 kid, and I promise, as he continues to fill out, he'll probably be a top 50 recruit at some point. Like that's how talented I think he is.
Easily. I mean, the kid is, dude. Whew. Like I said, high jumping 7 feet. Kid is jumping, man, 11 feet on the backboard. They talked about it. The videos out there. It's just freakish athletic talent. And would they dare take 3 in the 24 class?
Probably not. I would say 2's the number. And that's a good segue, though, Sean, because it's very important. I included this in my article this morning. A second tight end in this class is very important for Notre Dame. And I know usually people would be like, it's Notre Dame. You know, you have tight ends for days. Notre Dame still has a lot of talent in the room. But with Michael Mayer declaring for the draft, with Kane Barong transferring at the later stages of this season, entering the portal, with Kevin Bauman and Eli Raritan dealing with injuries, you are down some tight ends this offseason, man. And if one of those guys, Kevin Bauman or Eli Raritan, doesn't come back healthy, then you're in a tough situation depth-wise. So, yeah, you need to get tight ends in this group. You do. Yeah. I think 2's the number. I wouldn't anticipate it going higher than that, but I think 2 is definitely the number, man. I think it definitely is. So, again, getting a guy like Walter Matthews on campus, a Georgia kid who has never been to Notre Dame, a couple weeks after you offered him to get him on this quick, I think it's big time. I do think it's big time. We'll see.
He wants to come during the winter?
Right. And if he can come up to Notre Dame now, when I don't know how cold it is right now, Sean, what's it, like 30s over there or something like that? I would imagine something
Pretty
in that ballpark.
30, and I think Indiana just got some precipitation, I want to say yesterday. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the weather's going to be like this weekend, but it's pretty much around the 30s.
So if he comes to campus now, and I know it's not snowing, that would be the ultimate test, right? That's when I thought Jason Robinson from Cal was actually a legitimate possibility when he's like rolling around in the snow when he came on campus, right?
Absolutely.
But the fact that he's coming in a colder time of year, if he leaves and he has a great time and it moves the needle for him, that's when you know it's a potential fit, you know? Like that's legitimate, right? So, yeah, but big time, Walter Matthews.
70% of precipitation on Thursday. Friday, it drops down to 28. Nice. Saturday, it'll be 25 on Saturday.
Oh man! So if he has a great time, man, it speaks volumes, right?
The sun will be out though. The sun will be out.
That's good at least. Sean, to put the 7-foot high jump in perspective, Alan English just hit us with this. He said the world record high jump is 8'1/4". I had to look it up. Again, he did 7 foot.
That was like a sophomore in high school.
As a sophomore.
Yeah.
Sean, this kid could legitimately be a high level college jumper. 100%.
Yeah.
And not to mention he's a really good basketball player. Go watch his basketball highlight tape. It's just it's weird, man. Like it is just Yeah. So yep. So that's going to be the couple of the visitors we have this week coming in. We're going to be constantly updating the visitor list at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So if you want the latest guys that are coming, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. On the front page, there is a visitor list. It's right at the top. It's going to say Junior Day and the date, which is January 14th. So go check out the message board and the intel pieces that we'll be putting up for the foreseeable future with transfer portal stuff, with recruiting stuff, with team stuff. There's a lot of things to talk about. Want to move, though, in to some All-American Bowl recap, as well as the Under Armour All-American Game recap, Sean, that we got to take in. But that's going to do it for this section. Kind of some recruiting news around. So, Sean, one game that I want to start with in this All-Star Game recap that I was at in San Antonio, Texas, was out there for an entire week. On the east side, we had Brennan Vernon, defensive end out of Mentor in the state of Ohio. Adon Schuler, Irvington High School, early enrollee safety out of New Jersey. We also had on the west team, Drake Bowen, who, I don't know if you saw this, Sean, we'll talk about this. Drake Bowen is now a Mr. Indiana, Mr. Football in the state of Indiana. He's now the Gatorade Player of the Year 2 times. Got that this weekend, as well as being the Buckus Award winner. So, decent week. And also, he got voted as the All-American Bowl Defensive Player of the Year, which is everyone involved in that game. He was the Defensive Player of the Year. So, Drake Bowen's cleaning up, man. Sullivan Absher was the late invite to that game, taking the spot of Charles Jagasaw. As well, Michael Bell was on the West team, cornerback out of the Kincaid School in the state of Texas. Charles Jagasaw got there later in the week, which was great to see. Rico Flores Jr. was also scheduled to be in that game out of Folsom High School, but he was out due to the foot injury. We have a little update on him and his foot injury that was on the message board during the week. But Sean, I don't know if you saw this football game, man. We'll inject the week into this full conversation. But the East team won 55-17. It was basically the national championship game last night. It was wild, man. Ugh.
Let me tell you something. This is what I took away from that game. I had to hit my boy after the game. I had to hit my boy Drake. I'm like, man, please tell me that running back that leaked out wasn't your responsibility, bro. He was like, yes, sir. He's just so polite. He's always so polite.
He still calls me Mr. Roberts, man. I'm like, Drake, come on, man.
He's like, yes, sir. I was just messing with him. I was like, man, I'm just teasing. But no, seriously, I was like, yo. Yep, Chip is getting a good one out there at UCLA. That was the first thing I said. I was like, yeah.
No doubt about that. Yeah.
That's a darn good quarterback coming out there to UCLA. But we got Kenny Minchey. But also, I love what I saw from the young guys from us. And the updates you gave throughout the week, it seems like everyone got better. Adon Schuler and what he showed in the practices. Drake Bowen was a beast. Someone put a clip of someone and thought it was another guy, and it was actually Drake Bowen running through the bags. And they were like, yo, this dude is super athletic. And Drake was like, no, that's me.
It was what was that tight end? It was something Witt.
Yeah.
Witt Weeks. Yeah.
And Drake's like, no, sir, that's me. I'm the super athletic one. So look, that's what you get from these games, right? You get an opportunity to see these guys go up. The practices are probably more informational for you guys that were down there watching the one-on-ones and things like that. And, when you get to the game, they really can't do anything. There's no blitzing. There's really they might as well just have 7-on-7 out there because that's really the vibe. And you get to see the wide receivers and the quarterbacks entertain. That's really what it is. But Brennan Vernon made a very, very nice play. Brennan Vernon seems to me to be one of the smartest guys. He seems to me like he's going to be a very smart lineman.
Yeah.
The lineman that sniffs out screens, that sniffs out middle screens to tight ends and knows to I think he's going to be a very special player at Notre Dame, but in different ways. He's not Keon Keeley.
Sure.
Athletically, but I think Notre Dame is getting a very special player in Brennan Vernon that was really, quiet for the most part because he committed early and then he just shut it down. Like, don't call me. I'm not tweeting out other offers, anything like that. I'm not talking to media. I'm committed.
Dude, I love Brennan too, man. Sean, it was funny. A reporter, I'm not going to name the reporter because that would be disrespectful. A reporter came up to Brennan Vernon on the last day, and I'll say this: I got an interview with Brennan. He is awesome, bro. He is
Yeah.
so funny. He shaved his head. Did you see him shave his head? It was wild. But a reporter came up to him and asked if he could have a quick exclusive with him or take a picture or something. And Brennan's like, not today, bro. Not feeling it today, man. I was like, that's awesome. That's so fantastic. Brennan's that dude, man. But it's
And you know what?
so funny.
I don't know if we really have that type of attitude on the defense.
I don't think so.
I'm just a straight nasty dude.
Yep.
I don't know if Notre Dame has that. I don't know if they've had that in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
In a while, like someone that's just a straight nasty dude. Like, look, man, we're here for business.
Yeah.
Let's go.
He brings a aura about him, Sean, and I'll put it like this, and it was present in the game week. So here's kind of the overarching thing on Brandon Vernon. We'll get into the other guys. He is not a media guy. We've talked about that. He's not a social media guy. We've talked about that.
No.
But he has this energy to him that is infectious, man. It was during the practice, Sean. He was first in the line every single drill. And he was pumping up the other guys, and he had some juice to him, which was surprising to me. It was. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. Kid loves football, though, man. That's all I'll say about it. He loves to play. And throughout the week, you saw, first day, I looked at him. He came in like 20 pounds lighter than what he was during the season, by the way, almost 30 pounds. And he looked good, right? Like he looked physical. He looked explosive, all those good things. But you could really appreciate just how much more explosive he looked after losing a little bit of weight. He looked very explosive.
Yeah.
And his body is just filled out well, man. And he's going to be able to put on a ton more weight, I think. He could be a strong side end. He could be a 3-tech down the line. That's very possible. But the one thing that I think people underrate about Brandon Vernon, and I had an article about this as well, he's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
He's still pretty raw, man. He is. And I think we underrate just because Brennan's not a person that really talks to the media much. The media doesn't hype him up as much.
Mm-hmm.
My man is 6'5", with length, explosive. There's talent there. There is a tremendous upside with Brandon Vernon. You saw during the week, the first day of one-on-ones, he won inside, which is pure explosiveness and balance. Then he won outside. He beat Luke Montgomery, the offensive tackle from Ohio. That's going to Ohio State with a nice little double swipe. But then you saw some times that Brendan didn't have a full-blown plan as a pass rusher. You saw that. But then the next day got a little better. The next day got a little better. This is a young man that with proper coaching and with the strength program with Coach Bayless, with Matt Bayless, I think this kid could explode. And I agree with you.
Yes.
It's never going to be the same type of impact as a Keon Keeley, for instance, but it could be. I mean, Sam Hubbard's the guy that I just keep thinking about every single time. He plays for Cincinnati Bengals. He played at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He is going to. I think that Brendan Vernon has the potential to be a big-time run defender and also be a better pass rusher than what he is coming on. I think that he could really explode when he gets to Notre Dame. And you said it perfectly. Very aware football player.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't shocked at all to see that interception he had because he did it in practice this week, Sean. There was one rep where he got off the ball slow and he stepped back because he saw that there was like a little crossing route that was about to go underneath of his face, and he stepped right in front of it and had an interception during the practice. That's what Brendan Vernon does, man. He's very instinctive in that regard. He needs to get more aggressive as far as getting off the line of scrimmage, being a true pass rusher, but there is an innate sense of how to play the game, and he has tools for days. So Brendan Vernon, I thought, had really impressive week. And I said not only was it an impressive week, but he hasn't even hit near his ceiling yet, man. He could be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And on the East side, you also had a Don Schuler who quietly started the football game for the East. It was a Don Schuler and Caleb Downs as the starting safeties for the game, Sean. I'm just like, no one wants to talk about a Don Schuler, man. No one wants to talk about him. But from the day he got down to San Antonio to the day he left, he was just so good, solid all week. Didn't make a ton of flash plays because no one tested him all week. It was bizarre, man. It's almost like he was just in position all week and people were just like, nope, don't want to mess with that because he's not, we don't have a step on him. We don't have an open player.
Yeah.
He's one of those players that is incredibly smart, incredibly instinctive. And the one thing that surprised me was the first day I saw him moving around. I'm like, he moves a little more fluidly than I anticipated. He does. Yeah. And he's a little more comfortable working in space than I originally anticipated that he would be, because he's a physical dude. But now he's comfortable in space. He's also physical. Those guys, because Brendan Vernon also started in for the East, Sean, in a really talented defensive line room. It was Keon Keeley and Brendan Vernon were the starting defensive ends, which I know for some people are going to be like, what could have been? And trust me, I get it. I talked to Keon a couple times this week. Such a great kid, man. He really is. I really wish he would have ended up with the class, but I'm wishing him all the best in Tuscaloosa, because I know he's going to be a phenomenal football player and play the game for a long, long time. But Brendan Vernon started that football game. Adon Schuler started that football game, and they led the East. They only gave up 170 yards, Sean, and 9 first downs in that football game. Only gave 17 points. And I will say this. I know someone mentioned this already, so I do want to put this out in the universe, right? The West team leading up to the game, you could tell that the East was probably going to run away with it. I didn't think it was going to be 55-17, but I did think that the East had an easy advantage, and it was because the West had a lot of injuries, man. They had a lot of injuries. I mean, Charles Jagasaw was injured. Rico Flores was injured, but outside of just those two players in general for Notre Dame, there was a lot of players who were not able to participate for the West. So there was a lot of moving parts, getting replacement players into the game and stuff. But good to see Charles Jagasaw there, Sean. Good to see Rico Flores on the West side. Couple quick notes on both these guys, and then you comment on whatever you want, because a couple interesting things that I put on the board during the week. Charles Jagasaw, who's having his LCL surgery this week outside of South Bend. You know that. You reported on that after it happened. Was able to talk to him about the injury. So it stinks for him, because he was going to wrestle, and then he was going to play baseball in the spring. Not able to do either one, unfortunately. And I talked to someone.
That's a heck of a combination.
Yeah, man.
Isn't it? I gotta say.
An offensive lineman that wrestles and plays baseball. It's wild. It's fantastic. But I talked to Charles Jagasaw, and I feel really bad for him. Unfortunate, obviously, that happened, because if you don't know Charles, you don't know that he is one of the premier wrestlers in the state of Illinois. Fantastic wrestler. But one thing now, Sean, since he doesn't have to cut weight, he's one of those guys, man. I compare him to Trey Smith before, that played at Tennessee. Yeah. He's one of those guys that holds an extreme amount of weight and still kind of looks slim. Like he's one of those guys. He came up to me. I thought he was 300 pounds. You know how big he is right now? 325 pounds, Sean. And he looks fit. I'm just like, you're 325? He's like, yeah, I don't have to cut for wrestling. I was down to 299, but then I don't have to cut anymore since I can't wrestle. I was like, that's wild, man. This kid is massive. And I talked to someone close, like on the 247 sports side of things. They were prepared, Sean, to give him his 5th star this week. They were prepared for it. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to participate. But of the 325, he was thinking about early enrolling at the school.
But he wanted to defend his title.
But he wanted to defend his title, and then he thought about it again, though. After he had to get the surgery, he was thinking about actually early enrolling. He missed the cutoff by 2 days to early enroll, unfortunately. So it's going to be a little bit of a long road for Charles Jagasaw, who's not going to be enrolling until June, but he looks good. He looks strong. He's going to be a heck of a football player at Notre Dame. Rico Flores, also some news on him. He is early enrolling, wasn't able to participate in the game. Broken foot in the playoffs. He's 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So only like a couple weeks from now, he'll be full go. So he'll be able to participate in winter workouts. He'll be able to participate in the spring. Rico Flores is good to go. Sean, 2 fun notes and quotes that Rico Flores gave me, which was fantastic. One, he said, I was like, how special do you think the 2023 group can be? How good do you think it could be? He's like, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think it could be the greatest recruiting class that ever walked through Notre Dame. He said that point blank. But then not self-entitled at all, because then I asked him about his goals year one, and he says and I'm paraphrasing this one because I don't remember exactly how he phrased it,
Mm-hmm.
but he said, I just want to be the best man and player I can be. I want to work and I want to work hard because I know nothing is guaranteed to me. And that kind of stuff, you need that, man.
Mm-hmm.
You need that. There's a subtle confidence to Rico Flores,
Mm-hmm.
different than what Brendan Vernon wears, different than what some of the other classmates wear, what Drake Bowen wears.
Yeah.
But you need more of that, man. You need more of that. You do.
Yeah. You love hearing that. And that's what I'm telling you, man. We talked about this on a show maybe a month ago. Wasn't so much the physical that Notre Dame was bringing in its recruiting class. This recruiting class has a different mentality that I think was needed at Notre Dame, and it's still needed. When you think about how Brendan Vernon is, that mean streak, quiet. I don't want to do a lot of talking, but he's a super cool guy, and you could tell people love playing with him. Then you have a Rico. Rico is that dude. Rico is swagged out. You just go to his IG. Rico is super
Sean,
swaggy.
he had the grills in, man. He had the grills in when I was interviewing him. Yeah, he had them in. Yeah.
Oh, he was in the South. He was in the South, in Texas. Of course he had the grills in.
Oh, yeah.
He was down in Texas. But, yeah, they just have different mentalities, man. And those wide receivers, their mentality is just to dominate.
Yes.
Just to dominate. And this is something I talked about earlier today, man. In order to be a championship, this goes to what you said about Jagasaw. Man, he at that size, he can play.
Yeah.
Oh, he can play. If he comes in and shows that he's a dude, okay, maybe we put him inside until the two guys leave next year.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's one of the best 5, play him. Play him. Because physically he's ready. You talked about Pendleton. Big.
Yeah. He's big, man.
Big.
He's
big
mean.
body.
He's mean. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once again, mentality.
Yes.
That's that Quentin Nelson mentality on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Just mean, nasty. So I think the mentality of the players, even Christian Gray is the jokester. He's going to keep everybody light, keep everybody laughing. But yet still, when he gets on that field, he's an ultra competitive kid.
Competitive, yes.
Ultra competitive kid. Micah Bell, just, you know what? This dude is out here breaking on balls like it's nothing. Like he wasn't a great running back in the state of Texas. Dude, you see them performing in these practices, and it's like, as much as people want to talk about what Notre Dame missed, the focus needs to truly be on what they still retained. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, don't just poo-poo a Don Shula like, oh, well, we still got a Don Shula. Like, no, hold on.
Don can play, man.
There's a reason Alabama and Ohio State came after this kid late in the process.
Dude, Georgia came. Sean, Alabama offered. Yeah, a lot of them did, man. It was wild.
So, look, there's a lot to be ecstatic about. And we can't stress it enough. I'm with Rico. They should feel that way. They should feel that way. And they should feel like, man, you guys better be lucky that we didn't keep everybody we had in the class. Because then it would be a real problem. But I was jealous of you all week, bro. Jealous all week. But you kept me in the loop. So I appreciate you keeping me in the loop with the pictures and with the videos.
Yeah, man. I tried, man. I tried.
Tell Brendan Vernon he didn't have to do that, though.
What?
You didn't have to. I didn't want you to mention the name. See, bro, I didn't even want you to mention the name.
Oh man, he got him good, man. And, I mean, that's perfect. It's a perfect segue, Sean, because honestly, Sullivan Absher is a good person to talk about here, and we'll end with Drake Bowen, who I thought had the best week of any Notre Dame commit down there. I really do. Sullivan Absher, Sean, he was a replacement for Charles Jagasaw on the West, and the first day, full transparency, and I said this to Sullivan, so like it's out there, man. Mm-hmm. Did not look good on the first day in pass protection. Pass protection was rough. The one-on-ones were not great for Sullivan Absher, and he knows that. He admitted it, right? He knows that there's improvements to be made. We shouldn't have expected it. I didn't really expect it because he comes from a triple option offense. You know how many times he probably could count on one hand how many times he pass blocked this past season, right? Like, that's just not his thing. I even talked to Sullivan's dad about it, and like, you know, it works for them, right? South Point was a good team, and they run the triple option, so that's what they do. First day was rough. First day was rough in pass pro. When he gets the team and inside run, looks good, man. Looks good. Yeah, good player. The rest of the week, every day, he got better. He got better, and he got better, man. Every single day. And that's what you wanted to see, man. If he would have, no one's bitter towards CJ Williams. Get out of the chat. Sorry. Everyone just catches my attention at the wrong possible times. But Sullivan Absher, Sean, day 2 was better than he was day 1. Day 3, he was better than day 2. Day 4, he was better than day 3. Just got so much better throughout the week, man. He started winning reps. But yes, Brendan Vernon got him, man. He got him bad on one rep. He got him really, really bad. But Sullivan, give him full transparency, man. He took the call on a Thursday, was there on a Monday, competed all week, and got better. And I thought he played pretty well during the game. Were there a couple reps he wants back? Of course. And there always is, right? There's always reps that every player wants back. But Sullivan Absher, from day 1 to where he ended the week, big time improvements, man. Yeah. Absolutely massive improvements. So nice to see for Sullivan maturing. And then he also played some offensive guard or a lot of offensive guard during the week, because there was only one offensive guard on the roster coming into the week. So he had to play a lot of guard. He played some tackle as well. But I think Sullivan had a lot of improvements to that point. Micah Bell, Sean, first day, barely participated. First day of practice. He was banged up. He had a little bit of a back strain. Was kind of counting his reps the first day. Second day, he was a full go. They had a West practice, and they had a – man, I'm so tired of people. I'm about to start blocking people in the chat. Sorry.
No,
so
we can talk about it.
I'm about to in a minute.
I love talking about it.
Yeah, we'll keep talking about it in the mailbag. We'll get there in a second. Micah Bell, day 2, Sean, he was full go. They had the West practice, and they had the joint practice. Micah was locked down all day on that day, man. He had an interception. He had a diving pass breakup. He had a breakup against the kid that's going to Nebraska, Malachi Coleman, who is 6'5", supposedly runs a 4.4 40. He ran stride for stride, looked like he was running in slow motion, and had a wonderful pass breakup on a 6'5" wide receiver. Now, Micah had a really nice week after having a slow start, then did not have a good game. Like, that's just point blank, right? He didn't. He got beat by Brandon Innes in the end zone. He got beat for a touchdown by Carnell Tate for a 29-yard touchdown. Yeah. Did not have a great game. I think you saw in the game, Sean, that he is an incredibly talented football player, like fast, twitchy, all that stuff, right? But he's a player that played mostly running back at Kincaid, and last year in high school, he played safety.
Right.
Played safety. And you saw, though, that when you're playing against guys like Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate, for instance, if your technique is not good early in reps, you get in some bad positions. Like, that's just all point blank period to it, right? So when you play those types of athletes, you need to be more consistent.
Right.
You need to be more consistent. And if Micah Bell can be more consistent, he will. If he gets more consistent, then he's going to be great, because he can run with anybody. He has recovery speed for days. He has quick twitch ability to get in and out of his pedal. Like, he can do all those types of things. It's just when you have a bad early portion of a rep against a guy like Carnell Tate, he's going to make you pay. Like, that's point blank to it, right? Yeah. These aren't the guys that you're playing every week in and out at the Kincaid school, right? Where you can just get by on athleticism. When you're playing against those types of guys, borderline 5-star or 5-star recruits, you have to be consistent all the way through a rep to be able to match that type of athleticism. So he's going to be fine. Micah Bell is going to be good. He had a really nice week of practice, not a great game. But again, I think it's a learning experience for a guy like him. And I think he'll get a lot better. Yeah. Want to end with Drake Bowen, who Drake Bowen, Sean, from day one, he made a ton of plays. Had an interception during team, had an incredible play working in pursuit on a screen pass, even though he's apparently slow according to the fan base, which is just absolutely hysterical. The next few days was just good every single day, man. Like he was just stacking really good days for Drake Bowen. And he was the starting Mike linebacker by the end of the week, which he was rotating between Mike and Will throughout the entirety of the week. And then he ended up being the Mike, and Anthony Hill, the Texas commit or Texas signee, ended up being the Will during the week. And I think that speaks volumes for Drake Bowen, for one, because that's the main communicator on the defense. Picked up the defense incredibly fast. I've talked to Drake about his All-American game, All-American Bowl performance, and a couple missed tackles during the game. I think that people really went over the top on the negativity towards Drake Bowen, because the plays that he didn't make during that game were not athletically, right? That's not why. Drake needs to get better taking on blocks. He needs to be better getting off blocks. There's no doubt. Those things need to improve, which they should, right? But from start to finish, my opinion, and I care more about the practices than the single game, Drake Bowen was the best linebacker on either side during that week in a game that included guys like Anthony Hill. So Drake Bowen, again, sweep, cleaning up all the awards, and I thought he was tremendous down there in Texas.
Yeah. You know what? I'm done. You know what I think about Drake. Like, people talk about it as, man, I watched this dude steal base after base in baseball. I watched this kid play shortstop and third. I watched this kid come in on bunts and slow rollers, off balance throws to first. That's athleticism. Like, I don't need to see anything else. All-star games, they're not even played at full speed. They're just not. That game wasn't played at full speed. It wasn't. Nobody's out there going super hard. If they get on a block, no one's going making the extra effort that they would make on a Saturday in Notre Dame Stadium to get off the block. That's it.
And Sean, I was just looking up, because it's the same thing in the NFL draft world for a second, right? When you talk about the game versus how important a All-Star game is, like for the Senior Bowl, for instance, right? The scouts leave before the game every single year. They care about the practices. They don't care about the game. If you look at some of the past winners of like the MVP of the Senior Bowl, for instance, Amir Abdullah was the MVP one year. Isaiah Peed was the MVP one year. You know, the MVP was last year of the Senior Bowl, Sean? Perrion Winfrey, who could barely play for the Cleveland Browns this year, despite having some of the worst defensive tackles in the NFL. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, for every Justin Herbert there is as a game MVP, you have the EJ Manuels of the world. You have that type, right? So I don't care about what the result of a game in an all-star game in an all-star game setting. I care about what the practice was all week. And practice all week, Drake Bowen was exceptional. Was a very good football player from start to finish. So that's what I care about. We also had the All-American game that was down in the state of Florida. I know John Garcia, I believe, was out there. I think Brian Smith was out there as well. I actually did not get a chance. To see much of the game, Sean. So I just want to report on kind of things that I have seen out there, and for people that we know that are great sources, obviously. Yeah. Jeremiah Love playing running back and Braylon James playing wide receiver. If you watched a little bit of the All-American or the Under Armour game, Braylon James was a high target. Was a favorite target early on in this football game. Showed explosiveness, showed length. Jeremiah Love as a running back, well, I thought really is starting to fill out, man. He's still a guy that can gain a lot more mass to him, but explosive, hits the pole quick. He's got that the dynamic ability to him. So I think it was interesting. You saw two dynamic athletes in the Under Armour game, and then the All-American Bowl. you saw more of the kind of the lunch pail guys, right? The guys that play in the trenches and do all that type of stuff. But I thought overall, from everything that I heard and I saw, I thought Braylon James and Jeremiah Love both had nice showings down in Florida.
Really good moments in the game. Jeremiah Love as well. I want to say Braylon James was the leading receiver for a while in that game early on. So as far as catches, but yeah, I loved what both of them. We know Braylon James is just high ceiling, opportunity, coaching. Everything needs to be in the mix, and yo, I think he's really going to be the next. If I had to ask you who will be the next 1,000-yard receiver at Notre Dame, who would you put your money on?
I might actually go Deion Colsey, which might surprise some people, man. That might
Okay.
surprise some people.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought there was a lot of really pleasant signs with him, So
I think there's a chance with the new quarterback coming in that we might get a 1,000-yard receiver.
Mhm.
So that's why I asked the question, right? And if you're going to turn into a championship program, your freshmen and your sophomores have to be able to make an impact, right? Because that's what we see from Georgia.
Yep.
Their freshmen and sophomores make plays in championship moments and championship games.
Mhm.
That's what's needed, right? So the mindset is that, Braylon James, you can blame the development of Tobias on him learning the system or earning trust, but
Yeah.
they really didn't have a quarterback that could throw it around
Mhm.
to multiple targets. They do. Now they do. They have a guy, and they don't have that dominant tight end that's going to suck up 50 receptions minimum. So it could happen this year. The big play should be there. And yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about Drake. But the most interesting thing I think that you brought up is that the practices are the most important thing. And that's going to be the most important thing, especially for these early enrollees and to extend that for these sophomores. Like Marcus Freeman has been very clear. Like, we don't believe in gamers. You have to show us in practice. Right. And that's what matters. And this spring is going to be extremely important. Like Ryan, I remember we were standing there during the pro day last year, and we were saying, well, next year's pro day is going to be probably a lot better
Mhm.
in our mindset, right? We're like, okay, Brandon Joseph's coming in,
Yeah.
the Adamiolas will be leaving, Jared Patterson. Like, okay, next year's going to be different. I'm gonna be honest. Ah, I'm going to be so anxious to get to that darn first practice the next day.
Yep.
That pro day is going to be like, hey, man, what's the numbers? Let's send this to Brian. like, let's get back here tomorrow. That's what we're here for. That's the main event, right?
Yeah.
Because that is when the start of whether or not Notre Dame becomes that championship team. It starts then, and we should see the freshmen flashing, in my
Yes.
opinion, on that day.
Because there's a wild amount of early enrollees in the 2023 class. A
Absolutely.
lot. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I'm excited to see the some of the redshirt freshmen too, Sean, like the Tyson Fords of the world, the Billy
Absolutely.
Strauss. Like, yeah, I'm excited to see all those guys, man. I am. So.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores, Jason Onye, everybody.
Yes.
Everybody.
In the second spring under Marcus Freeman as the head coach too, it's going to look, I think, similar but a little different, right? There's going to be nuances to it, which is going to be exciting. But that's kind of our All-Star Game recap. We're going to get into a mailbag here in a second. We got a bunch of questions already started. Keep throwing those in the chat. We'll kind of get to those as we do. But this is going to end this portion of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. All right, Sean, I think we had a super chat that we're going to start here, okay? Actually, we had a couple super chats. I believe they're both from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Nope, that one's not that. Oh, here it is. Here's Charlie's first one. So Charlie asks, hey, IB, any word on the Utah State transfer? So that is the defensive end.
Yeah.
What's that?
Byron Bonds.
Byron Vaughn. So a couple of cool tidbits on Byron Vaughn, because I actually had the chance to talk to him a little bit, Charlie. So I know he was planning on visiting Notre Dame. I think he may have visited this past weekend, if I remember correctly.
He did.
We actually have been following each other for a little bit because in NFL draft worlds, he's actually pretty well liked. He is a long kid, 6'5", 35-plus inch arms. He has some silly length. Production has been sporadic over the last couple of years, but by all accounts, I think he is a player that Notre Dame is interested in. I mean, they offered him, right? So obviously he is interested. Byron Vaughn's is getting a lot of interest, though, because there are actually there's a lot of offers, because I talked to him, and there's a lot of offers that he's not announcing, that he's basically not accepting some offers. If he doesn't have interest in the school at all, he's basically not putting it out there that they've offered him, type of thing, right? Yeah. So I think there's interest on both sides. We'll see what happens to it and what happens of it. But I do think he's an interesting player, but I do think there's a few other edge types that are out there that Notre Dame's going to kind of be looking at a little bit. But yeah. I do think there's certainly some type of I think there's interest from both sides with Byron Vaughn. So development's going to be a big thing if he does land with Notre Dame, because he is not as good a football player as what his athleticism says on the field. Because he is a long, explosive kid that's had spurts of production, but hasn't had enough. So interesting player. I think that there is mutual interest. So that's kind of where we are right now, Charlie, is that I think there's interest on both sides. So we shall see. All right, let us go to, I think Charlie had another super chat. We appreciate you, by the way, Charlie. Here's the other super chat for Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. I remember when Rico tweeted out his top schools and people were complaining about his grills in his mouth. Never judge a book by its cover. Good kid. I would agree, Sean, that he is a very good kid.
I don't connect grills to being a good kid. So,
dude, there is this little like false opinion on that type of stuff, right? And not Charlie, obviously, because he didn't judge, but I do think there's some people that look at grills and think like a negative notion of a person, right? Like I do think that exists.
That's simple-minded people that don't understand culture outside of their own culture.
100%. No argument for me.
I'm sure I could have told you if he's going to the state of Texas, he's putting grills in his mouth. Because that's huge in Texas culture. So if he had them, he was going to wear them in Texas.
Yep. And I'll say this, man. I like to not judge people by what they look like because everyone is different and comes from different spots. All I can say, and just my full transparency, is Rico Flores is a really polite, good kid, right? He's another one of those kids that's a yes, sir type of person, right? So he's a good kid. I don't judge him at all for that. Like, it is what it is. So, yeah. But appreciate you again, Charlie. And I agree with you. He is a very good kid. And I think he's going to be a good football player at Notre Dame. I really do. We had Karen. Karen, I don't want to pronounce your last name, so I don't mispronounce it. So if you want to give me a pronunciation in the chat, because I really do not want to butcher your last name. He said, hi, IB Nation. Watched the game last night and not sure if it was good for college football. Georgia rolled over TCU and has another crop of 4 and 5 stars coming. Seems to take all the fun out of it. Sean, your opinion on this? It's a very, I mean, I definitely understand where Karen's coming from. Obviously, I wanted a more competitive football game. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, 65-7, right? That is wild. So I think in theory, she is correct in the sense that a 65-7 football game doesn't help the brand of college football. It certainly helps the brand of Georgia because now everyone's going to be like, yeah, I want to go to Georgia to win those types of football games, right? But your opinion on if it hurts college football, that type of an outcome last night.
I think what we saw, and I think we saw this in the semifinals, is that when you have underdogs that are given over a month to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a difference.
Right.
It makes a difference in the games. If Georgia had played Ohio State with a week of preparation, I doubt the game is that close. I doubt the game is that close. I believe Georgia's just that much better of a team than Ohio State. They played a C game and beat Ohio State playing an A game. So that really shows you how good Georgia really is as a team. So I understand that,
Yep.
but you know how I feel. Go beat them.
Right.
We don't do that complaining stuff. Go beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Georgia had the same task years ago to catch Alabama. They did it. Go beat. That's the litmus test. Go beat them. Go beat them. You complain we didn't have a quarterback to compete. Now you have a quarterback that should be able to help you compete in big games.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's not just that they have 4 stars, they have good coaches.
Yes.
It's not just the 4 or 5 stars. See, Jimbo's an okay coach. That's why the 4 or 5 stars down at Texas A&M leave. That's why they leave. And the 4 or 5 stars at Georgia, they stay. Why?
Yes.
Because this is darn good coaching.
And they win football games.
And
Right. Yeah.
that's why you
Yeah.
can lose 5 defensive players to the first round of the NFL draft and start 5 freshmen or sophomores on your defense and win another championship.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching. They got 5-star coaching and
Yes.
5-star players.
And that's a great point, Sean, because it's not just recruiting, right? It's not.
No.
Is it a big portion of it? For sure. You
Heck
need
yeah.
talent. You need talent. Like, there's
Heck
no
yeah.
doubt. But I mean, is Georgia? Well, actually, let me rephrase this. Texas A&M had a lot of talent this year too, right? They had a lot of talent. Were they any good? Nah, they weren't. Because to your point, can't coach, man. They're not. It's not a good coaching staff over there. Georgia has created a culture of really good coaches and really talented football players, and everything works cohesively together.
Yeah.
And Karen, I don't think it's bad for college football. I just think that there's a target on the back of Georgia now, right? Everyone knows where they need to get to be there, right? The precipice of college football. Did you see yesterday, Sean, in the pregame show when, or maybe it was the halftime show, I forget, when David Pollock had said something like Georgia's the class of college football, and Nick Saban was sitting right next to him, and he looked all spiteful, man. It's so funny. But right now,
what could he say?
You can't. They've won 2 straight national championships. They've lost 1 game in the last 2 years. Georgia is the standard of college football right now, right? And they are the team that has a target on the back. So honestly, Karen, for me, I think that it may ultimately help college football because now there's a standard to live up to, right? There's a standard to get to. So, I mean, yeah, maybe I'll phrase it like this, Sean. I don't know if you agree with this. Last night's result of the football game doesn't help college football, right? You don't want to see a championship game that's 65-7, right? Like that doesn't help anybody. But the fact that Georgia has now supplanted and put a target on their back, I think does help college football because now teams are like, we need to get to that, right? We need to unseat that team. It's not Alabama anymore that's just dominating, right? Now a team has kind of supplanted them, and now you know that a team can be supplanted as the national power. So you need to go get that. You need to beat that team. That's the new kid on the block. That's the team that hadn't won a championship in 40-plus years, and they showed that they can do it. Now we need to go do it and beat them in order to get to that point, right? So that's what I see, man.
Like somebody said it was very good question in the chat. Like, didn't Georgia have time to prepare for Ohio State? Georgia, the players and the coaches said we didn't prepare properly. They said that.
They did.
They said they didn't properly use the time. And they said they were rusty and off kilter because they hadn't played in a month. They said that. They know they got away with playing a C game against a team that played their Air 8. They said we didn't deserve to win that game. But somehow, some way, they were good enough to beat a team that's supposed to be one of the top programs playing an A game, playing their C game. That means you're really good.
Yes.
That's what it means.
Yeah.
And this is why I said, if Georgia plays their A game, I don't care who they play. If they played that way, you can put any team in the nation on that field last night. It wasn't going to make a difference.
Right.
It would not have made any difference. I don't care who it was. Wasn't going to make a difference last night. This is a season where you just tip your cap and say, you know what? That's a darn good football team.
Sure is, man.
That's just a darn good football team. It just is what it is. They were a darn good I think they were better than they were last year as a team. Because I think their offense was
way better than last year.
Years better than last year.
Agree with that. Yeah.
They were a better football team to me.
Defense was maybe not quite as good as last year, but it was still very good.
Yeah.
But then the offense took a massive step forward.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one. All right. Let's, Karen, appreciate the question. And it's very, very good conversation. I really like it. I think short term, just like in a vacuum, it doesn't really help college football. But I think long term, I think it might actually be beneficial. Great question. Guys, from Rob Osgood. Sorry.
Just one little tidbit on that. The difference in the once they go into the expansion, you won't have those long layoffs for preparation. That's going to change a lot, in my opinion. I just want to point that out. I think that's going to change a lot. Now you're going week to week as you go through the playoffs. That's going to make a big difference. It might benefit. I don't know who is going to benefit. We'll see how it plays out, but I think it's going to make a big difference that going into those matchups, you won't have those longer layoffs.
Agree. Another great point. Rob Osgood, thank you for the question, says, guys, in your opinion, how many recruits will Notre Dame take in the 2024 class? And if you could break it down by position. Sure, let's break it down real quick.
All right.
Quarterback, you have it already, right? That's that's good.
Yeah.
Running back.
I think they take 2.
I think they could take 2 as well. I think that they would be okay if all they had was Aeneas, but I do think 2 would be a good opportunity for them.
I think if a kid up in Wisconsin is like, I want to come, I think you say, okay. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Or Anthony Carey down in Florida.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like one of those guys, you absolutely say, okay, yeah, we'll take 2. I think wide receiver, I think tight end, you have 1, you take 2 at tight end. Right? You said that earlier. Wide receiver, you probably go with 3 or 4.
I think that, so you're going to have Caleb Smith that is going to have the 1 year, right? And that's the grad transfer from Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
You're going to have Matt Salerno, who's going to be out of eligibility after this year. And then, I mean, natural attrition, right? Like somebody's probably going to transfer or all that type of stuff, right? So I would say 3, absolutely, maybe 4. You might do another 4-man class because, I mean, we have to remember, Del Alexander left this wide receiver room in a very bad situation. Depth-wise, it was bad. So I think you're looking 3 to 4 at wide receiver. Yep, you hit tight end was 2. I think it's going to be a smaller offensive line class. I think 3 is probably the number. Right now you have Peter Jones committed, and I think that there's probably 2 slots for true offensive tackles.
I think they want Gerby Lambert is one of the guys they like.
And someone had a question about that we'll get into here in a second. Yep, Gerby Lambert is definitely a guy that Notre Dame wants. Defensive line-wise, this one's interesting, Sean. I think because you got Owen Wafel right now, who projects as an interior player, right? I think they take at least 1 more true interior player, at least 1. And I think 3 edges.
Yeah.
I think 3. I think 3.
Big end, 2 Vipers.
Yes, I think so. So I think it could be a 5-man defensive line class, which is you had a 4-man class in 2023. I think you could get up to 5 on the defensive line in 2024. Linebacker-wise, I think maybe 2. I don't know if it's going to stretch past 2. It's not because you just had another 3-man class on top of what you've already been building linebacker group wise. So I think maybe 2 is the number linebacker wise, maybe 1, honestly. Like it depends who wants to come, right? So I think it's 1 to 2 at linebacker. Cornerback, I feel like you're always just going to try to take 2. I think 2 is the number at corner. Just think that is. Safety's interesting. Because DJ Brown's coming back for 1 more year. He's going to be gone after this year. You're also trying to think of what other safeties are in the room. So you have the grad transfer, Thomas Harper, right, from Oklahoma State. He'll be out of eligibility after this year. I think 3 is the number again, Sean. I think 2 to 3 safeties, but 3 might be the number because, I think that's where we are. So again, to go through it real quick, Rob, sorry, I know we went through that very quickly, but we have 2 to 3 safeties, 2 corners, 1 to 2 linebackers, 5 defensive linemen potentially. I think 3 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, 3 to 4 wide receivers, 1 to 2 running backs, and 1 quarterback.
That's 23.
I think that's where we are.
That's 23. 23.
Yep.
23.
So I think it's going to be a little bit of a smaller class comparative. I know this one ended up with 24, but Notre Dame could have went up to 27 this year if they wanted to, right? I think 23 is going to be a little less because now Notre Dame's got some transfers. They just got a nice class that has a lot of eligibility, and Notre Dame still has a lot of guys that have eligibility remaining moving forward. So I think 23 is a pretty good number that we'll work off for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great question, though, Rob. Great question.
Yeah, I just, it's funny because, we love responding to people in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
People, once again, Ohio State could not beat Georgia with an A game. So if you want to tell me that if Georgia had played their A game against Ohio State would have won, you're out of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They couldn't beat them when Georgia played a bad game. Admitted they weren't prepared. The coaches and the players admitted we did not prepare well, and they caught us off guard with the stuff they did. Yep. And C.J. Stroud played out of his mind, and Ohio State played an A game and still lost. So you think Ohio State can line up with Georgia without playing an A game and still go toe-to-toe?
Man, if it's on the same level, like if Ohio State and Georgia both played C games, for instance, right? Or even if it's a B to a C, Georgia's winning that football game.
Give people respect, man.
Yeah. No, and as long as there's respect, right? Like someone just said, respectfully disagree in the chat, and that's awesome. Yeah, we respectfully disagree. Absolutely, no doubt.
Oh, wait, let me ask you. Wait, let me ask you a question. Let me show you the difference. Yeah. This is great. We don't even have to go head to head, right? Because these are top programs, right? Alabama played 2 C games this year, did they not? They had 2 C efforts this year. Did they win?
Wait, Alabama?
Yes.
No, well, I mean, I would say they have more than 2 C efforts.
Right,
to your point. No, they did not.
They had a C effort against LSU, and they lost.
Yes. Yeah.
They had a subpar effort against Tennessee, and they lost.
They probably had a C effort against Texas A&M, and they barely pulled that one out.
Absolutely.
Right? Yep.
Ohio State had a C effort against Michigan, and what happened? They got banged at home.
Yeah.
Georgia had 3 minimum C efforts this year. 3. They won all
Missouri.
3.
Yeah.
They won all 3. That's the difference. Teams that cannot play their best and still win games show you the difference. Nobody was on Georgia's level this year. Yeah. They were the only team that could play multiple subpar games and win the games.
They were the best team in college football this year.
And it wasn't close. Yeah. If they play their best game, no one was close to them. They just weren't.
Don't disagree. I mean, you remember what they did to Tennessee, Sean? That was when Tennessee was healthy too. They dominated.
The only reason the game wasn't worse is because it started raining and Kirby called off the dogs.
Yeah.
That game would have been worse if it didn't start raining like crazy in Athens. It would have been worse.
Yep.
So, look, they sleptwalk through that Missouri game for 3.5 quarters and then just hit the switch.
Yeah, they were like, okay, we need to get serious now.
They just hit the switch. Dude, Alabama tried to do that multiple times this year. They couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. They ended up with losses. Ohio State, they didn't bring that A effort against Michigan. They got banged. There's only one team that could go to the playoff, not bring an A effort, and still win a playoff game. And they did it.
Agree.
I'm not saying that to disagree. I just think people are being really dismissive of what Georgia did this year. They're being really dismissive.
I mean, what are they? They're 29-1 in the last 2 years, right? And they've just been dominating folks for the most part. Like, I mean, that's just where we're at. And honestly, people are going to find this so disrespectful. I'm going to say this, Sean. They did that with Stetson Bennett as their quarterback. Who I know, look, hey, Stetson Bennett's a good college quarterback, but don't be fooled to think that he's not buoyed a little bit by some good dudes around him, man. Let's not be fooling ourselves about that. There's a reason that Stetson Bennett is sitting here with no Senior Bowl invite, with no East-West Shrine invite at the moment. Like that's a fact, man. It is a fact, all right?
Hey,
Again,
man.
I'm not throwing too much shade because he ended up being a much better college player than I thought he was going to be. He's a really good college quarterback.
Show him some love.
He's a two-time national champion, man. He was on the Heisman finalist this year. I show him love when he needs it. He played good football, no doubt.
He might go down in history as the greatest Georgia football player of all. I mean, some people might.
That's wild to me, man.
I mean, I'm just saying. He's a two-time MVP of 2 championship games. I'm just saying, with 2 titles.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
He's a really good college quarterback, man. There's no doubt. There's been a lot of good players that's come through Georgia, man.
I agree. I agree. But when it comes to like Georgia football, and
someone just said Herschel Walker, though. That probably be my vote. Probably my vote.
I'm telling you what the people in Georgia are going to say. They're like, man,
I saw someone on Twitter say this last night, Sean, after the win, or maybe it was this morning, because I actually went to bed pretty early last night. I went to bed, it was like 45-7. I'm like, all right, this is over with. But someone said that earlier today, I think, and I think it was a dead serious tweet that Stetson Bennett's the greatest Georgia football player of all time. And I'm like, really?
I told you they're going to say it. They're going to say it. Dude, it's the same way Florida fans say, oh, Tim Tebow's the greatest Gator of all time. Like, are you kidding me?
You think it's somebody else?
A dude named Steve Spurrier.
Spurrier, yeah, that's a good one.
And you go back and we're talking about the greatest player, a guy named Emmitt Smith, and what he did. Like, come on, man. Tim Tebow played with some pretty good dudes at Florida. That team was stacked.
Tim Tebow has a much better argument than Stetson Bennett, though, in this situation, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Just as a college player. Obviously, when you talk about the pro and college thing, like, I mean, it's guys like Emmitt Smith, right? Yeah. Like, that's no conversation.
I would agree with that. But when you win championships, that for college fans, that just elevates. Look, no one would tell you in their right mind that Tony Rice is a better quarterback than Brady Quinn.
Right.
But you start talking to Irish fans about which one is held in higher esteem. Tony Rice has that championship, bro.
I get that.
So that's where that conversation comes from. I think maybe they're not labeling it right when they say, oh, he's the greatest quarterback or the greatest player. No, it's like, man, they need to give it another label.
Yes.
Yes. They need to give it another label, definitely.
I will say this about Stetson Bennett. This is the ultimate clap here, Sean. Really is. He's gotten as much out of his ability about as anyone that I've seen in college football in a few years. Like, I'll say that about him, man. He is not very talented. I mean, he is 5'11", even, right? 180-something pounds. Pretty decent athlete, not a bad athlete, and an okay arm, but he's not incredibly talented, man. He's really not. And he is now a 2-time national champion and a Heisman finalist. So I'll give credit to Stetson Bennett, man. He got the most out of his talent. There's no doubt.
Like, who do you think is the better quarterback? And see, this is where it gets tricky. Right?
Yeah.
Who's the better quarterback? Mac Jones or Bryce Young at Alabama?
Bryce Young.
But Mac Jones won that title. See, Bama fans would be like, Bryce didn't win the championship. It's always tricky, man. It's always tricky.
I get that.
It's always tricky because that for college fans, that championship means so much, and that's why Herschel Walker he brought that championship to Georgia. So you have a guy go back to back and bring man.
Yeah,
I don't even want him to mess up his legend. Don't even try to go pro. Don't even try. Just walk off into the sunset, get you a nice little Netflix deal for your movie, and make money. I think he would actually be good on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree. It's and I know Cincinnati's been kind of a guy that people throw a lot of shade at, including myself. I've thrown a little bit of shade at him, man. I will not lie, but he's gotten a lot out of his ability. There's no doubt about that. And he has 2 national championship rings. So
Yeah.
someone says he's at the age of retirement.
He
That's
really is.
funny, man.
He
That's so
is.
funny. Hey, man, Stetson Bennett probably has like a master's degree. He's got 2 national championship rings. So he's got my respect, man. He's got my respect.
Mhm.
We had another super chat. We're going to get through a few of these a little quicker just because I have to go pick up the child today from daycare. So Charlie was his last belt. Stetson needs to hire someone to carry his heavy hand with 4 rings on it. Tells you, imagine what Notre Dame can do with a great quarterback. Guess we'll see this year. Charlie, I agree, man. I mean, if Notre Dame can land a great quarterback, I think that you're going to see how good this team could be pretty quickly, right? Because that's been one of the positions that just hasn't been quite good enough at points, right? That has been. So agree with you on that one. All right, we're going to roll through a couple of these, Sean. There was actually another super chat I wanted to get to in a second, but we had Nick Lane who's asking a bunch of recruiting questions about certain players. I'm going to knock a few of these out real quick, Sean. I'm going to keep these a little brief because we have a whole offseason to talk about these. Nick Lane just asked about Amelia Agard, who's out of Philadelphia, or out of Pennsylvania, I should say. I think he's actually out of Philly. Cornerback. So Emilio just had a top 8 maybe like 3 weeks ago. Notre Dame wasn't included. So that's kind of where that one is at. I don't feel good about that one currently. I don't really think Notre Dame's prioritizing him too well. Tyler Smith said, IB Nation, wanted to ask how you guys thought of James Laurinaitis after his first season. Did you see improvements from the linebacker position? Sean, I mean, this is an imperfect question to me just because Al Golden is the actual linebacker coach here, but do you have any opinions on James Laurinaitis in the first year? Any opinions about him at all? Or let's just talk about the linebacker position, I guess, this year.
I think James Laurinaitis, like everybody else, was tasked with double duty, which was being a coach, developing young men, but at the same time developing as a coach for the first time. And that's a difficult task, especially when you throw in recruiting and other things that are expected of those coaches. Like Ryan said, I think we're starting to see most of these coaches in the 24 class swing for the fences in recruiting because this is their first full cycle of being involved with the program and being involved with the players. So absolutely. I think James Laurinaitis, from what we yeah, you have to feel great about the job he's done. And that's strictly from what we've heard about Nolan Ziegler, Jalen Sneed, and the rest of the young linebackers in practice. I mean, he's the guy working with the youngsters. So when you hear all of these great things about the young linebackers coming out of practice, it's due to the work that James Laurinaitis has done with them. So, I don't think we can really look at the young linebackers not playing and judge James Laurinaitis on that.
Right.
I don't think that has anything to do with James Laurinaitis because I think a lot of the young linebackers could have played and produced this year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think it's imperfect too, Sean, because at the end of the day, the main guy working with the linebackers is Al Golden, right? And then James Laurinaitis is kind of a part of that machine. But I agree with you. I think the young guys, if you see them take massive steps from year 1 to year 2, for instance, right? The Nolan Zieglers of the world, then I think that's I think it's kind of a great little image of what his impact was for the linebackers. So we'll see. I mean, this year was not good enough. That's just what we're at, right? Like the linebacker position just wasn't good enough this year. It needs to get better. There's no doubt. I don't think anybody would dispute that. All right, let's knock some of these out. Nick Lane said, Mailbag, Ja'Shawn Ross, would he be a good edge player to go after? Maybe. I think that Ja'Shawn is a really talented player. There's just some things I've heard about him that I just don't know if he's going to be a great fit at Notre Dame potentially. So I just think there's going to be other guys that are prioritized. So we'll just leave it at that. There's a time and a place to have those deeper discussions. Nick Lane also said, were you guys talking about Corey Smith, the running back out of Wisconsin? He was one guy, Sean. You want to talk about Corey Smith for a second, man? Because I know you're a big fan.
Man, just go watch his film.
That's it, man.
You don't need us as like recruiting analysts or experts. Like it's really as simple as just turn on his film. Just turn the film on. It's enough said.
If you liked Ronald Jones at USC, I think you'll like him. I'll just leave it at that. He's very, very talented.
Yeah.
We had Nick Lano said, Bronte Johnson out of Indiana. How are we looking at him? We got guys in state we got to get. So I think Notre Dame likes Bronte as a safety. I think that Bronte is very open to Notre Dame. If Notre Dame pushes hard, I think that they'll have a very good opportunity at Bronte. So it's kind of where we're at with Bronte Johnson. Nick, I'm just going to give you credit for a couple of these, man, because we're banging through these. I love these questions, though, because they're very informative to what this show is, right? This is the recruiting hour. This one is Jordan Thomas, maybe out of New Jersey, is a match maybe. So I would say this about Jordan Thomas. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 295 pounds. Long kid, super long. I do think he would be a good fit with Notre Dame as a player. I genuinely, though, right now, just don't think there's a ton of interest on his side. So that's where we are with that. I think there's a couple interior defensive linemen that there's a little more traction with. I just don't think there's a ton of traction with Jordan Thomas right at this moment. Could that change? Sure. Right now, I don't think so. We had one about Ryan Wingo, Sean. Where are we at with Ryan Wingo? I would say with Wingo,
I think they make his cut down list.
Yes.
That's probably coming.
Yes.
You know, but some guys do 2 lists. They go to like an 8-10 and then they'll go down to a 4. I think Wingo's probably going to do the same thing, 8-10 list and then cut it to a 4 and then ultimately make a decision somewhere in the fall or early, late summer, early fall.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame's going to make the final list.
I think so.
Opinion.
Yep. No, I think they will too. I keep telling people I think that they are a real player for Ryan Wingo. Will they end up with him? I mean, I don't know, man. Like it's still very open in my opinion. I do think Tennessee's a major player. I do think there's a couple schools that are major players. I think Arkansas is actually a little bit of a major player, to be honest, just because of his family ties. But I think Notre Dame has a legitimate shot there. I do. So getting him back on campus this spring, I think, is going to be a priority, obviously, right? I think he's going to be at Tennessee this weekend. So getting him back sometime soon will be big for them. We also had one about the Smith brothers out of Massachusetts, Sean. So that's Jacob Smith, Jared Smith. Yep. Jared Smith is more the strong end interior player, and then Jacob Smith is a 6'5" Viper type. I think they're both high on Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's high on them. It's just a matter of closing and seeing when the final date is to make a decision. So I think they're in a good spot with the Smith brothers.
Yeah.
Sean, you talked a little about this kid earlier, so let's bang this one out. It's about Gerby Lambert. How are we at? Where are we at with him by any chance? So I think Notre Dame is very high on Gerby Lambert, obviously.
They are. His teammate was in the 22 class. He's very high on Notre Dame. He was very talkative about Notre Dame, and then he just kind of cut down the whole media thing while they were going through the playoffs. And now talking to him, he's going to have a list coming out in the next week or so, going into the open period. And just like him, he does plan to get up to Notre Dame in the spring for another visit. And then, all of these guys, it's so the 24 guys really want to make decisions earlier.
Yeah.
They do. So summertime, expect a decision for Gerby Lambert. And linemen are like that. I don't think a lot of offensive linemen really take, their recruitments deep unless it's,
They don't. I mean, they're just trying to make a good decision. It's like Jagasol last year, right? Like he wasn't holding out because he wanted to have the media and stuff, right? Like he just wanted to make a good decision. Like that's just it, right?
That was it. So.
Yeah. Yep. Gerby Lambert's high on their list, though. He's a very talented kid. Him with Harry Heastant is a
match made in heaven.
Yes, it is. A couple questions here left. We have from Jay Henry. What does safety recruiting look like in 2024? Obviously, over the weekend, Sean Peyton Woodyard committed to the University of Georgia, which was expected, right? Notre Dame was high on his list, but it had kind of been Georgia for a few weeks, right? So Notre Dame had a shot there to get back into it late, but just, Peyton made a decision, and I hope him well. Great kid, by the way. Peyton Woodyard is a great kid. I had to meet him in person for the first time this weekend. Really good kid before he made his decision. So I'm happy for him. Where is safety recruiting, Jay? Honestly, it is weird right now, man. I'll be honest with you guys. Like It's still a very talented board that Notre Dame has. I mean, they have guys like KJ Bolden on the board, Mike Matthews, Rico Jones, Kaj Sanders is a kid I know they'd like out of New Jersey, right? It's a very talented board, but I am not sure what it's going to end up looking like for safety in 2024 right now, man. I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and we'll see what the final decision is. So that is we'll see. I actually have an article coming out soon, Jay, about kind of what it's going to look like. And so I think there's going to be a few names on there to keep an eye on, but I think Notre Dame has some work to do for the safety recruiting in 2024. We have Tyler Binge, who just said, Mailbag, how is Okoye's recruitment going? That's Danny Okoye, who's a homeschooled kid out of the state of Oklahoma, Sean. 6'5", 230 plus pounds. If you want to see some fun film, go pop on Danny Okoye, who is a absolute freak show of a football player, man. A little raw still, but he has incredible length, explosiveness. That would be right near the top of my list as far as true Vipers in this class. That kid is an absolute stud. So where's it at? He's scheduling out visits for this spring and summer right now. Notre Dame will definitely be one of those visits. There's no doubt. And I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a game visit as well to Notre Dame. So I think Notre Dame is well liked on his behalf. I think Notre Dame also reciprocates that interest. So I think Notre Dame is going to be a legitimate player for him, but you're going to have to fend off the Oklahomas of the world, those, deep Midwestern schools, right? Like those are the teams, because he's an Oklahoma kid. And it's hard to get Oklahoma kids out of Oklahoma sometimes. Like, it's just point blank to it, right? But I think Notre Dame has a pretty good shot, and it's just going to be about impressing when he finally gets on campus, because he's not been on campus yet. So that's where we are with him. Last question, Sean. Just want to bang this one out because I had a little piece on this young man recently, Nicholas Morse to Jason Robinson Jr. I love the film. That's the wide receiver out of Long Beach Poly. I don't know how realistic it is, though. But dynamic player, no doubt. At least Stuckey has made the decision a hard one. I'll say this, Sean. I'll let you comment on whatever you want to. I think that there is a lot of interest on that side of things from Jason Moore. A lot more than I thought there was going to be. When I heard he was visiting originally, like a few months ago, and then he ended up not making the visit, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, he's not leaving Cali. Even though he's committed to USC, I think there's a legitimate chance for Notre Dame here, because the thing that people near him have commented on a lot is that Chancey Stuckey is relentless. And they went out to Notre Dame when it was snowing for the Boston College game. They had a great time, man. So, yeah, I think there's a realistic chance that happens, Nicholas. Is it going to be hard? For sure. Getting a Cal Poly kid away from USC, right? Like, that's not easy. Long Beach Poly kid, but I think Notre Dame has a chance there. I do. And his younger brother is a really good player too, as well, Jaden Robinson, that you need to keep eyes on for 2025.
You're darn right he is. I think Malik, he plays against those guys every year out there in the CIF, and he raves about both of them, and he raves about the younger one a little bit more than he
Skyler.
Raves about. Yeah. So, yeah, that's if they can get one. I mean, that's Notre Dame with those guys, Emmett Mosley. They have a chance to get some impact guys from California in 24. Some real dynamic playmakers.
And when you're a national brand like Notre Dame, you need to dip into Texas like they did this season. You need to dip into California like they also did with Rico Flores and Cooper Flanagan. You need to dip into the hotbeds of recruiting. And I think that Notre Dame has a chance to do so as well. So that's going to recruit it. That's going to end it for the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here. Joining you live, Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here, as well as Sean Davis, Recruiting Analyst for IrishBreakdown.com. Before you leave, if you could please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell, because we'll be having a lot more shows this week, as well as IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. We want to thank you all so much. It's going to be a long off season, a lot of good recruiting intel. Sign up at boards at irishbreakdown.com. Thank you all so much. Thank you from Sean. I am Ryan. Thank you all again for joining Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast.